National Children's Centre was founded in 1974 by Brian Jackson. He was undoubtedly one of the most influential educationalists of the 20th century, and today we're going to be speaking to two of the founding members who knew him best and diving into the history and founding of Yorkshire Children's Centre. We'll be exploring the way Brian Jackson's mind worked and the close friendships that his revolutionary ideas were built and supported by.
My personal relationship with Brian began when I was 4 years old, and we went to the same infant school, but I didn't know him then. And in later life, when I found that out through talking, he said, well, you wouldn't have talked to me because I was a snotty-nosed kid at that time, and you would be better behaved than me, so.
I knew Brian. He'd come in, him and Hazel would be in her room, she'd surface and said, Brian needs a bacon sandwich, can you go out and get one? And at lunchtime, said, Brian wants to go down a pub. So we'd go down a pub, and after a day or two, Hazel had enough work for about 6 or 12 months.
I want to take a closer look at how Brian Jackson's revolutionary ideas came to fruition, and how it allowed him to create some of the most important changes in education and welfare before his untimely death in 1983.
His work lives on, but quite often it's not tied to his name.
Well, Brian, I think, was part of history in the way that he thought, the things that he set up. And I think you can't just ignore it. When things go wrong, you need examples of how things can be when they're good. And you need as many examples as possible. And I think Brian is an important one. He was making things better when, in the 60s, we were supposed to have been, a very much a first world country. But underneath that first worldness was a third worldness. It was there. And he highlighted it. And that's what you need all the time. And I think Brian can be one of those examples.
But to further understand his impact on modern day society, let's take it back to where it began for one of the charity's founding members, Hazel Wigmore.
I'd worked in industry, and I've ended up working for a firm where I was a junior executive and I was doing a lot of travelling. And I realised then when I started a family I wouldn't be able to continue working. I was given the job of going into schools and taking out groups of children who were not progressing well with their English, and particularly children from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Hong Kong. And so because I was doing that work and getting to know the families, the manager of that work was called Trevor Bergin, and he knew Brian Jackson well because they were in the same field of research and at the university. And when Brian came back to Huddersfield to start the National Children's Centre, I was suggested as the person they might interview. So I got to know him very well at that time. So he made breakfast, his wife was teaching, she was out, the kids were at school, and he said, right, we're going to start National Children's Centre. What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? And I thought, and so he was asking me questions to get my ideas. And that was what he did. He taught me when recruiting staff to find out what they could do and what they knew. And then he said, give them space. Don't say, this is your job. And you know how people say, I can't do that because it's not in my job description. But they have to have a job description, but give them space. And so this was his idea, let people grow. And if they're going too far off track, then just bring them back. But this was his idea.
He knew how to get people's attention. And he never had any notes with him. He'd done his work beforehand. And when he started talking, it just captured you because he got to the nitty-gritty. What he said was interesting. It wasn't just a load of sentences strung together just to make up, well, you know, I've got 20 minutes to do, right, I'll fill it in. You know, he could have carried on and on and on, because it was all natural to him. And the thoughts and the needs of what people wanted and how to get there, that's what I think inspired people. He saw what was the problem, but he could also see how to solve the problem in a way that was the most efficient in getting into people's minds.
People thought it was children who refused to go to school, young people. No, it was schools who refused to have troublemakers. When they were thrown out of 5 schools, then nobody would take them. So we set up a school here, and they chose to call themselves not school but cool, which I thought was rather good. So instead of having police looking at solving the problems, look at the problem before it begins and look at why these youngsters fall out of school. And mostly it's because they're intelligent kids who are bored and they want something different, and so that's what we provided. So whatever time they come during the day, you welcome them. If they're an hour late, you don't say, right, you're in detention, you know, you're an hour late, and you say, you know, you welcome them. You say, oh, it's great, what did you do before you came? It's interesting, tell me. And they don't go into a class straight away. They were all boys, by the way. And the first thing I ordered was a pool table, because, as Brian had said, you can talk to youngsters while you're doing an activity. Art, you know, we did a lot of art, and while they're splashing paint about and all that, you can talk to them and get to know them. Playing pool, you can talk to them, and that's the idea, because what they miss from their families, they perhaps come from a big family, and the parents are very busy, or perhaps they've only one parent who's having to work, and they need somebody to give attention to them particularly. And so these were Brian's ideas that were taken into the way you deal with youngsters who fall out of school. You don't take the parents to court and fine them, because that makes no difference to the young person. It doesn't make them want to go to school. But the idea here was that they chose their own name for the project. You know, they chose their own activities, and you teach maths through the football scores. You know, you teach English through what they're interested in, and you do a lot of artwork and teamwork, so that they learn to work together. So Brian's ideas live on, you know, because he was looking at why something happens, why young people come out of school.
One thing you seem to hear a lot when talking about Brian Jackson is his mind and constant ability to be working on groundbreaking new ideas. The execution of these ideas could send those who worked for him on very interesting endeavours.
One week when I rang him, he said, play buses are big in America and they're coming to this country. Go and get a double-decker bus, Hazel. And I said, where from? He said, that's your job. And I said, we've no money. No, you're better without money. If you say at £500, they'll want £600 or £700. You'll argue about money. I want you to argue about the bus and tell them you've no money, you want a bus. He said, there's cemeteries for buses everywhere. So find out and get one. And it was true. And I was fairly young at the time, and it was, you know, a joke. When I went, I got someone to take me to where the buses were when they were dead, and they called everybody in to see this silly girl who had no money and wanted a double-decker bus, and had a bus driver with me who could drive it, you know, all that. And they were really sending me up.
My remit was to convert double-decker buses into play buses. So I had a team of 2 young men, 16-year-olds, and had to scrounge all the materials, etc., to make play buses to go and work in the local communities. And over the years, I didn't do them all, I only was involved in, I think, the first 3. We converted 8, 2 of which we sent to Ireland, which we got some funding to do that. And it was fantastic because it was an excellent way to get into the community and go into the areas which weren't being in any way catered for by the local authority or anyone else or other charities.
And so they tore the seats out and they put in, you know, sand pits and, you know, all the stuff there. So there's quite a big space for children to play. But he said, put some seats upstairs, go to an area where there are Pakistani families living, where the women don't go out much, and get them to bring the children on the bus, and then upstairs, you're a teacher, teach them English. And so the idea was the women were upstairs learning English, and the children were downstairs supervising play. And then he said, next year is Year of the Disabled. An idea for you, Hazel. Disabled people never go on the top deck of a double-decker bus. He said, why don't they? Because they can't go up the stairs. Right, people in homes where they can't go up the stairs have a stair rider. Get a stair rider company to put in a stair rider on a bus. And here we go, you know. And everybody was very excited about this, and to have a fire escape over the bonnet of the bus to, you know, so you could get out if there was a fire. And so we built the first play bus with a stair rider, and it won the competition, which was at Pebble Mill Television. And I didn't go down because the bus driver who'd helped me, who was a Jamaican bus driver, fantastic, he went down and drove the bus, and he was on television with Starsky and Hutch, who were very popular at that time, and all that. So he loved it, and of course we won. So Brian must have thought when he saw somebody disabled, oh, that poor man, he can't go on the top deck of a bus. And he got these ideas that other people don't have. You see disabled people, you want to help them, but you don't think about how things could change, you know, to help them.
If he saw something needed to be done about this, he saw the vision of how to get there and the road to take to get there. Not purely academic, but practical. And that we've always stayed practical at National Children's Centre and Yorkshire Children's Centre. It's about doing the things in the way that is best way done. You have government ways of doing things which they'll get the theory, and there'll be a lot of people saying, well, what you really need to do is do this, this and this, and you do it, and it has little impact, it has little ownership by the people you're working with, and that's the other important thing. Like when the play buses, what I loved about it was that you went there, you went down the street knocking on doors and said, do you want to come and play? And it started a community feel as well, because some next door neighbours wouldn't know.
While making this film, I was most fascinated by what seemed to be Brian's most impactful startup to date, and was amazed that his name was nowhere to be seen in relation to it.
He was interested in not just research, which everybody did in Cambridge and Oxford, but research action. The research you do, like into childminding, you then do action from it and you change it from what you found out. Because a lot of research just ends up in universities on the shelves, and that's it. And it's good, you know, because you're researching, and as you know, you can get all that information and use it in your dissertation. What happens then? Is there any action after that? And for instance, he had the idea that parents were worried about their children but didn't have anywhere to go to find out. Because if you let people know that you were not confident in bringing up your children, you might have your children taken from you, and they may be taken into care. And so if they were having difficulty with children, they'd know where to go. So Brian decided to use television again and use the telephone. Everybody had a phone. And so he set up the childcare switchboard, and all different parts of the country had a team. Our team was for Leeds, because that was the nearest broadcasting station. So he did pilots, Nottingham, Bristol, Manchester, Derby, Leeds and London, and took over the studio for a week at a certain time in the morning, and people could ring in and they'd have experts there to answer the questions, you know, and I can remember we got somebody ringing saying, I'm locked in the bathroom and my little girl's outside hammering on the door, but if I go out, I don't know what to do with her. You know, she's, we'd say, how old is she? She's 4, and she just goes berserk, you know, I just don't know what to do. But I daren't tell the authorities because they'll take her from me. So it was, you know, somewhere to ask questions, and the response was tremendous. But what he always prepared well, and what he did, because he wanted men, fathers particularly, to ring in, not just women, he produced and had printed a number of beer mats, and it talked about childcare switchboard and the times it was on, different for each area, of course.
He knew if you wanted to capture dads, you go down the pub. So he distributed beer mats, you know, went in a landlord and distributed them. Because he understood, you know, you can't talk from a cloud to people that don't want to know.
And our job was to go into all the pubs and clubs throughout Huddersfield and ask the barman or the manager if we could take out all the beer mats and put our beer mats in for nothing. Of course they said yes, and told them what it was about. And then the men would see that when they were drinking and talking with people, and they all felt comfortable then because everybody knew about it. And they said, oh yeah, I have trouble with my lad, he's out till all hours and I don't know what to do with him. And I'll ring up, yeah, and see what they say. And it was an overwhelming success. Now, because that was national, we were part of it, of course, here. It became very well known. It was put to Parliament, and it was thought that was a good idea. It was put to the broadcasting people, and Esther Ransom was chosen to be the person to lead it, and it was the beginning of Childline. Now, nobody knows that it was Brian Jackson's idea. They think it was Esther Ransom's idea because she fronted it. And Childline then became open for children as well as parents to send, you know, put in their ideas and their problems. And that became a national, very successful idea. And we took it to Australia, and it's throughout Australia now, they call it something else. But it's Childline in Australia, and it's being copied in other countries. So that's his legacy, really. He was a great thinker, and he just needed people to put those ideas into motion.
Brian Jackson's innovations didn't stop there. He was set out to make a change, and in his belief of going to the root of a problem before it began, he set out on another remarkable voyage.
Good morning. Today we'll begin the first of 5 talks on the oceans.
Using the media, he knew how to use it. You know, the printed word and the connectivity in the radio that he used of getting to people. And I think that he was the inspiration and the progenitor of Open University. I think his original idea would have been, from what I've heard, is that he looked at that it was aimed at people like miners.
Brian was sitting on the steps of Cambridge University, which was his university, and Michael Young came out after giving a lecture there and started chatting. And Brian said, "I've got an idea, Michael, what do you think of this?" He said, "I come from the north, you know nothing about the north, but let me tell you, if you live in Barnsley, if you're born in Barnsley, there's no point in going to school or college, or you don't go to university because your grandfather went down the pit, your father went down the pit, and you're going down the pit. So my idea is that we put university onto television, and we call it University of the Air, and it goes on at 7 o'clock in the morning for an hour, and that you can study there, and then you use a correspondence course to send your papers in and get the questions, you know, that you have to answer. And you can do your degree dissertation by watching television and postal course and meeting a tutor every so often. What do you think about it?" Michael Young said, "I think that's brilliant." Then it was developed as it went on because it was so successful. And they thought, this should be open to everyone. And so the idea of the open university, of having a university which wasn't a big building where people go for 3 years, that you could work and do your degree course by the television programmes and correspondence courses. And so that was the idea that started the Open University.
So bringing this film to a close, I was struck learning of the change that Brian Jackson set in place. Knowing now of the things he created that I and so many others take for granted, I can't help but wonder why I haven't heard his name in history lessons or as one of the great pioneers of education and democracy, and in my hometown, a local hero. Now feeling somewhat connected to the story, I was curious as to how Yorkshire Children's Centre were practising and preserving Brian's legacy to keep his message alive.
Whoever plants the seed, it does more than anyone else, doesn't they? I watered my own seed by thinking of it. I'd say because it led me into a career which has been fascinating and wide and varied, and something I've loved doing, which he started, and Hazel certainly kept it growing in the right way. I'd say it's impacted on me and my family, because I've been happier than I would have been in a job which was just a job.
He had the vision that we normal folk don't have. Where he got it from, I don't know. Came from an ordinary working class family in Huddersfield,
And he was a working class lad, the same as what I was, and he had no pretensions, none whatsoever. And that's why I in my own heart, I stayed faithful to him and stayed with the charity for over 40 years.
And he would sometimes ring me up in the morning and he said, "Oh, Hazel, I had an idea when I was in bed this morning about so-and-so." And I think, my ideas are about getting up and getting showered and getting my clothes on, you know what I mean? I don't have these visionary ideas to change the world.
It was incredible the way his mind must have worked, because it really was honed into young people. It didn't matter who they were. It wasn't about nice young people or nice kids who acted nicely. It was all kids. He understood about them, and he understood about it deeply.
So this is what I think is his legacy, really. Teaching people that you don't... People say, "I can't do that because I've no funding." No, you find ways of doing it.
Well, that you could open your eyes and make you see that something was wrong, but that something could be done about it, I think. You don't use people. You don't harm others to better yourself. And if you've got the abilities to help someone do so. And working relationships are extremely important because they make you more efficient as well. And he was the sort of man who never blew his own trumpet. He never went looking to get massive jobs and lots of money. It wasn't his style. He was just very natural in how he worked.